They can't do this. It's disgraceful. I mean, a human? What could he have possibly done besides being exceptionally average in every conceivable manner? General Karna, it was nearly unanimous in the Senate. I think you're just jealous someone else is going to be in the limelight for a change. But two in the same century, and to a human no less. Honestly, they're handing them out to anyone now. What next? They're going to give one to a Lethan for getting above-average scrap in his junk scavenging quota. Well, before you come to your conclusions too quickly, General, let's at least give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this human was slightly above average. Ambassador Calix chuckled. But I do agree, it's far too soon. I mean, 11 medals in 5,000 years, and we get to witness 2 in our lifetime. Regardless, I am happy for another holiday being added to the human calendar on the dreadful occasion that I have to work with them again. General Karna grumbled as they made their way down the red carpet that stretched up the steps of the Great Hall. General Karna was greeted with a spectacular fanfare of music and cheers as he stepped through the entryway. As the last recipient of the Galactic Honor Medal, he would be one of the guests of honor for the ceremony. Just yesterday, he turned down the offer to be the one to personally gift the medal to the human, saying his presence alone would be enough of an honor. He made his way to his seating near the front of the opulent awards hall and took his place near the podium. In his seat was a small paper-bound book titled The Escido Conflict, a first-hand account. He picked up the volume with a grumble so he could sit down. Why did they think he wanted to waste his time with reading about Escido? He personally peer-reviewed countless publications on the military strategy and political consequences of Escido. He was sure he could retell the statistics and strategy of the Escido conflict better than any mere foot soldier on the ground. Seeing the Great Hall decorated for a Galactic Honor Medal was an opportunity very few would get to witness in their lifespan. And here he was seeing it all over again. But this time it wasn't adorned for him, but for some pitiful human. The massive banners that bore the insignia of his species' last ceremony had now been replaced with the emblem of the humans. It seemed rather distasteful to have his beautiful banners replaced with something so minimalist. The Great Hall had the capacity for nearly 1 million spectators from hundreds of different species, and for the second time in a century, it was completely full. Once the remaining important dignitaries, ambassadors, and political and military leaders found their respective places, the ceremony began. The leader of the Terran Republic made their way on stage and gave his opening remarks. Nothing really worth paying attention to. General Karna was more focused on the empty seat near the podium, hoping to get a look at this supposed above-average human. He wanted to witness the man for himself and see what could be so special about him. Confusion was spreading across the crowd once more, and more people took notice of the strangely empty seat. This human is giving me more and more reasons to dislike him. I mean not showing up to his own galactic honor ceremony? That should be a crime if you ask me, General Karna said to the ambassador seated next to him. Perhaps they have some grand entrance planned. Leave it to the humans to be overly extra with their presentations. They don't even have the decency to adhere to millennia of traditions. Well, if it gets any worse than this, they'll ensure they're never given the opportunity to earn another, which is fine by me. After the usual introductions and dreadfully boring formalities of starting the ceremony, General Karna finally blessed the speaking human with a modicum of attention. For over 5,000 years, the Galactic Honor Medal and its recipients has stood as a beacon for all of our members in service, from any origin or species. It represents something that anyone can strive to achieve and to be the change that would impact the galaxy for the better. It is reserved for individuals who display acts of valor that save the lives of millions, whose actions single-handedly change the course of history as we know it, and whose displays of courage are to be remembered and appreciated by all. With this in mind, it is my hope that today we shall remember a soldier who has given more to the galaxy than anyone presently in this room. General Karna rolled his eyes at the last remark, thinking that it might have been somewhat directed at him. This human probably did not have the slightest comprehension of what he had to do to earn his. A soldier whose acts of uncontested bravery may be an example for all to strive for in their military service. United Terran Army Private John William Ringgett has distinguished himself from his peers by going above and beyond anything expected of him when he entered service to the Galactic Republic 1 year ago. And it is with great sadness that he is not present with us today to receive this honor in person. General Karna leaned over, whispering again. Oh, I'm sure he has much more important things to do right now, but I guess desecrating the prestige of the most important award in the galaxy is pretty paramount. Ambassador Calix gave a small laugh. And they refer to him in the past tense, as if he is someone different now and is no longer the same human who earned this award. Private John William Ringgett graduated from the Terran Infantry Academy and Orbital Strike School and immediately was sent to Escido to take part in the large-scale stabilization operation there. At 17 years of age, he left Earth and was dropped into one of the most hostile zones on the planet. After 3 months of fighting on the surface of Escido, it was seen as a losing battle, and his squad was issued an evacuation order. They were told to depart from the planet and leave it to its destruction. At around 1800 hours on the 7th of June, Terran Standard Time, his squad made the executive decision to stay behind to ensure the evacuation of Esciadian civilians. At the time, they did not know it, but they were escorting the very last members of the Esciadian species. Upon this revelation, though filled with countless people, the room had grown completely silent. Many had heard of the tragedies on Escido, but until now none had known just how severe the circumstances of the war had been and how close the species was to complete extinction. His squad secured the only remaining spaceport on the planet and started the evacuation of the civilians. However, at the time of arrival, only 3 of the squad of 9 remained. His 2 squad mates, Staff Sergeant Andrew Miller and Technical Sergeant Brian Jones, took control of a military transport and set to bring the civilians out of the war zone. As they prepared to start the evacuation, they became aware of an enemy battalion expeditiously advancing towards the last remaining entry tunnel. Private John William chose to stay behind to ensure the safety of his squad and the civilians, in the hope that he could buy time for their withdrawal. Before their departure, Private John Williams sealed the doors to the facility and set up a hasty defense in the tunnel. At 2000 hours, a battalion of enemy combatants, aided with multiple military support vehicles, began to assault the facility, set to ensure the complete extermination of the Esciadian people. Private John William placed himself between the attackers and the entrance door at the end of the tunnel and attempted to stave them off. Ignoring insurmountable odds, Private John William continued to fight in an unwinnable battle against an unending enemy opposition. Beset by an endless barrage of machine gun fire and plasma fire, Private John William held the line for the 4 hours it took to evacuate the civilians. It took nearly 3 trips to transport all of the citizens from the port. When they began their transport trips, military forces had already completely withdrawn from the surface of Escido. As the final soldier on the front lines in the Escido conflict, Private John William gave the ultimate sacrifice, knowing that there would be no reinforcements and no evacuation for himself. For his utmost bravery and courage in the face of an indomitable enemy, his actions reflect the highest glory upon himself and his unit. For his service on Escido and to the galaxy, Terran Republic Private John William Ringgett is awarded the Galactic Honor Medal. Let it be known, a soldier does not have to return from a conflict to be recognized as the pinnacle of military valor. Private John William is the first individual to posthumously receive the Galactic Honor Medal. In your seats, you will find his personal diary of his time on Escido, published at his last request. It was his hope that the tragedy that transpired on Escido is never forgotten to history, and his first-hand account aids in making that possible. When his speech ended, the Great Hall did not cheer nor celebrate as it had for past ceremonies. No extravagant light display or confetti decorated the Great Hall and dazzled the spectators with the glory of the recipient as it normally would. The human speaker merely placed the medal atop an empty wooden casket that was hidden behind him and departed from the stage. The long and drawn-out tradition of handshakes and exquisite feasts did not follow the ceremony. What followed was a procession of delegates and dignitaries paying respects to the empty casket that symbolized the recipient of the award. General Karna looked down at the paper-bound book that was still in his claws, regretting that he was so quick to dismiss it earlier. He made a note to take the day off tomorrow so he could read it in its entirety. He walked up the stage and made his way towards the simplistic wooden box. He was not entirely sure what its purpose was, but it seemed to be something reserved for a solemn affair. After waiting in the line of people placing gifts and colorful flora from various worlds around it, it was his turn to pay his respects. Inside was a flag, a pair of small metal tags with human writing stamped into them, and the medal, which would normally be the center of attention. However, this piece of metal seemed rather minuscule in comparison to what it represented. He stood over the box and placed his clawed hand on the side of it. "Do you have anything to give, General?" asked Ambassador Calix in a small voice. "Nothing that would do him justice, only my condolences and apologies for how I composed myself earlier. I suppose this human was above average after all, but I now feel that would be quite an inadequate way to describe him." General Karna sat in his office. The floor-to-ceiling window that lined the far wall displayed a sprawling metropolis that sat at the galactic core. He looked down at the book resting in his claws, reading the title again, The Escido Conflict, a first-hand account written by Private J.W. Ringet. After witnessing the award ceremony the day prior, he had decided to pick up what would be his first piece of human literature. He really was looking forward to seeing that particular human yesterday, but at the time, it had been for the wrong reasons. Now he had a different rationale for wanting to meet him, but that would not be possible. As meaningful as the ceremony was, the actual speech had been rather brief. Before attending, he would have been glad if someone told it would be short. He now knows that such a brief recollection of events did not do this human's actions justice. He remembered his own acceptance speech being nearly 3 hours long and included various celebrations throughout, as he covered every detail of his command decisions during his tenure in the Outer Belt Rebellion. But this award had differed greatly from every other galactic honor medal that had been given. This was the first time it had been given to someone who was not an officer, and not even a non-commissioned officer at that. This wasn't given to someone who had the luxuries of a command post off-world in a pristine office or a comfortable room aboard the galaxy's strongest dreadnought. This was given to someone who had been in the dirt and the mud and the blood. One who had seen the worst the galaxy has to offer and made something that mattered out of it. He poured himself a glass of methane-infused tea and leaned back in his chair, curling his scaled tail into a comfortable position. He opened the book and began to read the words written by the recently deceased soldier. Below are excerpts taken from The Escido Conflict, a first-hand account written by Galactic Honor recipient Private John William Ringet during his short time on Escido. Additional quotes are sourced from surviving Escido soldiers and Terran military documents, along with statistical analyses of the conflict. February 28, 2287. Terran Standard Calendar. I wasn't always sure what I was going to end up doing. I knew I'd join the Army, my dad was in the Army, and his dad before him, and so on. But I didn't know exactly what I would end up doing, if that makes any sense. 20 years with no combat, a boring desk job after 10, where's the fun in that? I wanted to do the things that kids read about in history books growing up. That's why I chose the infantry. I thought about the Navy, too. Loved pirates since I was a kid. Hell, I still am a kid. Maybe I joined to stand out, get noticed, which is pretty damn hard when you got 15 brothers and sisters all under the same roof. I joined up as early as I could, got my parents to sign the forms at 17, and a few months later I found myself here at Fort Benavidez. Training isn't bad, but sure was harder than running track for my high school back in Boston. Met some great guys here, only a few of us got an OD slot. Never thought I'd get the chance to see some action so early, but I've always wanted to do the things that a soldier's supposed to do, so this is my chance. We get our duty stations tomorrow. All but a few of us are going to Escaido. All the boys are excited, talking about all the aliens that they're gonna kill. I'm one of the ones that got an OD slot, so I'll actually get a real fucking combat jump. My brother is going to be so jealous when I get back with an orbital strike combat patch. March 2287. Easy, Co. 395 class consisted of 235 infantry graduates. 198 of them were sent to Escaido, all ages 17-20. Only 26 survived. E395 in, Training Co. March. Graduates, 2287. March 7th, 2287. Terran Standard Calendar. Well, I passed orbital drop school. It was everything that I was expecting it to be and more. A welcome change of pace compared to infantry school, though. The food was better, we ran a lot more, which was fine by me. It was funny finishing all the runs minutes ahead of the other guys. I just sat there yelling at them, cheering them on when they passed the finish line. Sometimes the black hats would talk to me to pass the time, other times they just said good job and left it at that. I wasn't really looking for their validation, but it was cool to get it. Guess all that time I spent running finally paid off, which is a good feeling. They say we're going to be at Escaido in less than a week. I'm getting nervous as it's getting closer. I mean, this is the first war that we've been in for almost a century. I finally understand how those soldiers felt back during D-Day and World War II. I wonder what it's like off-world. I don't know much about Escaido, but I think I remember some other guys saying it's cold. We've only been involved with all these different aliens for a few years, and we're already getting into a fight. I'm no politician, but I'm not sure that's a great look for intergalactic politics, if you ask me. Oh well, all I gotta worry about is the cold, and I don't do well with the cold. But I guess it's my job to be uncomfortable, now I just gotta embrace it. During Escaido, our paradroppers had a 75% fatality rate. If they survived entry, then they were often killed before joining up with their squad. 60% of paradroppers had less than 3 months of training. LT Colonel Mickey Hayes when asked about Escaido paradroppers. March 12th, 2287. Terran Standard Calendar. Fuck, today was surreal. It honestly felt like a dream. Maybe fever dream would be the better way to describe it. We were all crammed into that shuttle when we reached orbit. We couldn't see outside to know what was going on, just had to trust our pilot to get us over the drop zone. We had a shaky entry, and the shuttle sounded like it was going to tear itself apart. We all lined up at the door as we felt the dropship heating up. Once we got the go-ahead, we were pushed out the door one by one. I looked up to see the shuttle itself nearly melted as the last few almost made it out. Then I got my first look at Escaido. I saw the vast white expanse of ice and rocky hills that littered the landscape. Fuck, guess I'm fighting on Hoth. That's a cool way to look at this. Some cities were visible in the distance, but the biggest thing I noticed was the tracer fire. Well, I thought it was tracers. Turns out that was superheated plasma. Other shuttles weren't as lucky as ours, and several other paratroopers pulled too early and their chutes got burned up by some stray shots. I waited for my altimeter to start beeping before I pulled the chute just like I'd been trained. I hit the ground. I'd done 2 drops before, but fuck, landing on rocks hurts a lot more than soft grass. There wasn't any cover around, but thankfully I was in a pretty secluded area. I pulled out my Terra map and started making my way to the rally point. As much as I loved rucking, I wasn't too keen on walking 12 miles in an active war zone all by myself. Oh well, just gotta embrace it. I got to the patrol base a few hours ago, chafing like a motherfucker and just wanting to stop walking. We had most of the platoon out here by the time I arrived. I had never actually met them before today. They didn't say much in the shuttle, but they said there was supposed to be a lot more of us. We holed up in the snow that night. I was thankful that we got issued the Arctic drop suit for this, and yet my hands are still trembling from the cold as I hold this pencil right now. Yea, it was about 40 during the day to maybe 80 at night when I was on Hokkaido. Yay, Celsius. So I guess that's around 100 for you Americans. I remember sometimes someone would get shot and they wouldn't bleed. Come to find out the blood in the wound had already frozen solid the second it touched the air. SGT Takeshi, Tiny Man Munamori, when recalling Hokkaido. March 14th, 2287. Terran Standard Calendar. I killed one today, well, I think I did. I shot one today might be a better way to say it. To be honest, it was kind of hard to tell. He was so far off in the distance and wind really whipped around the snow, so it was really hard to see anything. The thermal goggles barely even worked after 100 meters. He was running across a road maybe 500 out. I took the shot and he fell down but slowly dragged himself to his feet. I think I was too stunned to shoot him a second time. I don't know why I didn't. But it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. Didn't feel like anything, but it's not like I was looking him in his eyes when I shot him. Do they even have eyes? Maybe they have something entirely different. Other than that, I still don't know what they look like. It looked tall. I think they're supposed to be reptilian or maybe amphibian. Don't quote me on it, I'm not a biologist. That was really all that happened today. PL says we're heading into a town here soon to look for signs of civilians. I wonder what the Ascadians look like. I guess technically that's why I'm here, for them, that is. It's just weird thinking that I'm supposed to be here to save a species that I've never seen or heard of before. And now I'm fighting a species I've also never seen or heard of, until I shot one. For many in Hokkaido, this was their first experience off-world. At the time of the conflict, only the most privileged and elite had been able to travel to other systems. Many who joined the war effort came from families who could not afford to go off-world, hoping for a chance to see the stars. They had no way of knowing just how brutal Hokkaido would be. Quote, from Political Inequality in a Galactic World, by May J. Matt Anderson.